Of course, we brought you this top story reports saying Sudanese Army General Chief General, in fact, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and paramilitary Rapid Support Forces leader General Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo have agreed in principle to a 7-day truce. This is expected to start from Thursday. Now, at the same time, South Sudan President Salva Kiir has stressed the importance of a longer ceasefire and of identifying representatives to facilitate the peace talks. Now, South Sudan is reportedly designated as one of the countries to host the talks after offering to mediate in the conflict. Violence in Sudan erupted on the 15th of April, killing hundreds of people and forcing hundreds of thousands from their homes, with many fleeing the country. Tensions had been building for months between Sudan's army and the RSF, which together toppled the civilian government in an October 2021 coup. The friction was brought to a head by an internationally backed plan to launch a new civilian transition. Let's stay with the story, in fact, and speak to our international editor, Sophie Mokoena, who joins us in studio now. Sophie, thank you so much for your time. Of course, quite a lot of talk around this particular, ceasefire. The report saying that the two generals have agreed on a truce. So how important are these developments?
This is quite important because this will present an opportunity to the stakeholders who are involved in the conflict to find one another, particularly to ensure that the international community is able to facilitate the talks. We know that the Secretary General of the United Nations did dispatch an envoy who is currently on the continent to try and negotiate for humanitarian assistance to be able to be made available to those people who are affected in Sudan. As you know that currently there's no food, there's no water, there's no medicine, and therefore it's quite important to have a window of a ceasefire where you can deliver the humanitarian assistance. But of course, they are talking about 7 days. That will also present an important opportunity for the facilitation process.
Does this present an opportunity for the regional body, IGAD, to facilitate a process that can potentially lead to a permanent ceasefire?
Yes, as you heard earlier on, and when you read that information that the president of South Sudan, the neighboring country, a member of IGAD, pointed out that they need time so that they can be able to put together a team that can mediate or facilitate the talks. And therefore, the 7 days can assist in terms of preparing for that. And perhaps after 7 days, if they are able to find one another, they can add perhaps more days so that you have a strong team that can facilitate the peace process. And that team should be mainly anchored by people from the continent, and therefore then you can have the neighboring countries, but also included would be your Arab League and of course the United Nations and powerful countries, because you really have to sponsor the peace talks. And we are hoping that tomorrow it will be clearer when we have final word, particularly from the United Nations, after the AU Commission chairperson has spoken to the Secretary General. We know that Antonio Guterres will be on the continent tonight. He's going to Kenya, and perhaps on the margins of his engagements in Kenya, he will be able to engage the journalists in the afternoon. He is going to touch on this issue, and I think the African Union in particular, IGAD, the regional body, the Arab League, the UN, and other stakeholders will have to work very hard to ensure that this truce does hold.
Especially given what we've seen, talk and very little, translating on the ground. I mean, we've looked at Sudan, and of course, some have been inward looking in their approach, understandably so, because of what's happening on the ground. But how has this conflict affected neighboring countries? Are they coping at all?
They are not, but they are trying their level best. You have countries such as Egypt. They continuously receive people who are leaving Sudan. Some of them, they don't have documentation, and it is a challenge. Remember, the North region and also the Sahel region, these are the regions that are very sensitive to issues that are related to security. Now, you go to Chad, the neighboring country. Chad has got its own fair share of problems and a number of refugees and the refugee camps. You go to Central African Republic, literally a troubled troubled country. You cannot expect the Central African Republic to be able to accommodate people fleeing from from Sudan. You have South Sudan. South Sudan has got its own challenges. They are going to elections this year. South Africa is assisting. The Deputy President of the Republic, Paul Mashatile, is an envoy there, and they are trying to assist South Sudan. And now with this, it is a really, really difficult task. That is why you have countries such as Saudi Arabia with all the facility, the capability. They are assisting as part of the Arab League. And I think Egypt is really playing a prominent role. We know even our own citizens were assisted by Egypt.
A difficult task and a desperate situation unfolding on the ground. Let me thank you for your time, Sophie. That is our international editor, Sophie Mokoena, giving us the latest from Sudan.